The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. 489-1240. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. You can dial up across the Hail Varsity Radio Network and find us on the stream YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe that way. Different platforms as well, KFOR, Facebook, and Twitter, AM 590, Omaha's ESPN, Central Nebraska's Superstation, Gardy Hastings, Grand Island, and our friends in Columbus, News Talk 900. That's Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, and can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Loaded up, plenty of thoughts on Nebraska Creighton. We will be very baseball heavy in hour two as Nebraska heads up I-80. They'll touch gloves with the Jays. Both teams on fire. And a big-time opportunity for Nebraska to keep on keeping on. Creighton's been pretty magnificent as well when you look at combined wins and loss records. So it should be a good one tonight. We'll get perspective from Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7 Sports, and then Husker Hall of Famer and a man on the hill that's pitched in this game, Joba Chamberlain, in the 5 o'clock both. We'll talk Husker Baseball, some Husker Basketball thoughts from Bruntzy as well. In hour one, Mitch Sherman will join us. Mitch from The Athletic will release the fury at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. 15 minutes away. Plenty to dive into with spring football. Defensive day, a death row day, as you say, with Terrance Knighton. Heard from Pat Roast, the defensive line coach. Heard from Mr. Tony, Coach Tony White, and Polar Bear. A few players also joined in. So pretty good day overall to get going. Elijah, it is National Peanut Butter and Jelly Sandwich Day. It ranks where for you when it comes to sandwiches?
It ranks number one on the most overrated sandwiches list.
But is it also the most consumed?
Probably. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy and it's tasty. Like,
the average American will eat 3,000 peanut butter jelly sandwiches in their life.
I will take the under on that for myself. I don't like peanut butter and jelly that much.
I think I'm under it as well.
That being said, I get the appeal. It's convenient. It's easy. Have you ever had a grilled PB&J where you do it like a grilled cheese?
No.
You butter up the ends of the bread and you fry it up in a pan. That is the way to do it. That is a delicious peanut butter and jelly. That one's undefeated. But the standard PB&J, like, it's fine.
Strawberry grape.
I prefer strawberry. People say I'm crazy for that.
No, strawberry's a good call. I go with butter and then peanut butter and butter. We might as well just grow into a full D cup. That's what I'm saying.
Butter with peanut butter and then more butter.
It was killer. It was the old Husky jeans, and you wanted to be a D lineman when you grew up.
Let me guess, peanut butter fluff too. Did you do the marshmallow fluff?
No marshmallow. Creamy, not crunchy.
Yes, okay.
Right.
I differ with my roommates on that one. They think I'm crazy.
No,
creamy peanut butter, so much better. But yeah, at the end of the day, is PB&J probably a top 5 sandwich because of the ease, the simplicity, and the tastiness? Sure. But is it also the most overrated sandwich out there? Yes. It's
good. It's convenient. And let's just take a moment for a tribute to the old P.O. Pears burger.
P.O. Pears?
It was burger, cheese, little red onion, bacon, peanut butter on top.
Okay, yeah. I've had a similar burger to that, yes.
It was glorious. So, when we talk sandwiches and the rankings, it's got to be top 3. What I ask about
number one overall, all time, cheesesteak?
Give me a Cuban.
Cuban's up there too. Cuban's really, really good.
Cuban's good. So you saw the numbers, and I think it was right around 7, maybe 8 million with Iowa and LSU last night. And I know it's been beaten to the glue factory from a dead horse with that game. And it's not that I don't want to give it props. It was on at our house. It was amazing to watch Clark do her thing. And it was must-see TV, and it delivered on the hype, okay? Between the viewership, her performance, the rivalry between LSU and Iowa, great. Where I want to go with this, though, is to a Nebraska-type angle. And I want to ask this question. Do you think Nebraska will be must-see TV next season? Are they going to be one of those teams that, okay, they pick up some momentum and they'll be on because everybody in the Big Ten's on some sort of channel. Got a great TV deal. Aside from, baseball tonight where I have to pay for a subscription. When I look at Nebraska football, what makes them must-see TV? Is it their style? We don't know what level their offense is going to be at. I do know what was fun watching for Nebraska fans a year ago was the defense. And it's a defensive day here post-practice. I think the defense could be special. They could be nasty. They could be dominant. And Nebraska fans are going to love it. But to the point where they're going to be fun for other pockets of the country to watch. I think they could be that good. So if Nebraska's must-see TV and on a winning clip and in some football games has a good November, we're ahead of ourselves, I know, from April 2nd. But do you think Nebraska can be one of those teams, not just air quote to watch, right? A team that could be a dark horse or a challenger in the Big Ten, but just overall, could they be a team? We got off the America's team topic from basketball and Cinderella. Could Nebraska be one of those teams stylistically folks love to watch? And I ask that question because you've got a young prodigy at quarterback in Raiola, top quarterback in the country. You've got some playmakers at wide receiver you like, specifically with a couple of the transfers that they're really ready to break out. I know Banks was first team all ACC. But just with their power and finesse mix, and then you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, where they've got a whole army of defensive linemen that can stop the run, be pretty bone-crushing, and then get after the quarterback. There's a lot of flash with a defensive back in Tommy Hill. And, he's somebody that is working off of a really good kind of breakthrough season. What's his ceiling like in that secondary, along with Hartzog and company. And, of course, you got Giff we talked about yesterday. Hey, sky's the limit for this football team. We'll see where they settle. But as far as Nebraska goes, are they a to-watch team? Are they a team that people in the ACC, while it still exists, are they a team in the SEC that folks are going to tune into? I mean, you have the national brand that exists, but think if your performance level picks up.
I will say, in terms of the must-watch nature of college football, teams that become must-watch, and I'm going to circle really since the college football playoff era started, but more specifically the past 5 years, because we've seen how football has changed within the past 5 years. Defense-first football teams don't tend to be must-watch television and where college football is today. And that's because of rules that kind of limit big hits. That's because of the added explosiveness that we've seen from college offense in recent years. It's rare to see a defensive football team become must-watch. Like, what team from the past 5 years that was a dominant defensive unit do you think of being must-watch TV? I can't quite think of one.
I mean, it's been...
Georgia maybe, but Georgia had explosiveness on offense to pair with their defense.
They did enough. They had some game breakers on offense.
And that's what you need. You need to have game breakers on offense, and specifically at the quarterback position.
Now, points of plenty...
Like Colorado does not become the must-watch television that they were at the beginning of last season if they don't have Shedeur Sanders at quarterback and Travis Hunter catching passes from you. Like the
they're scoring
nature,
45 a game, right? I mean, offense brings the eyeballs. And you can do that... high-flying, fun and gun, whatever.
Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily that, but there has to be a nature of explosiveness to your offense. And Matt Rule has said that's what he wants his offense to be. I think Nebraska has a quarterback that can push the ball downfield with accuracy in a way that not many college quarterbacks can do. Obviously, you have to wait to see how it translates to the Big Ten field come this fall, but you have a guy that checks the boxes of being a guy that can create explosiveness within your offense. That's the number one thing I think you have to look for early in the season to see. Can Nebraska become a team that draws national eyes and not in the car crash kind of way? We had Brian chime in and say, pileups on the racetrack are must-watch TV. Be careful what you wish for. And there has been that. There has been that. Like 2021, the best one-loss team in the country. Nebraska at times during that season was must-watch TV because it's like, man,
how are they going to piss it away?
Nebraska's got a one-touchdown lead in the third. Let's see how they blow this one. Nebraska was must-watch. Jeff Sims at the beginning of last season. Let's see how he's going to turn the football over. Must-watch TV in a way. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking must-watch in a good way.
We're not asking.
I can't miss Nebraska because they're going to do something on the field on Saturday that's going to make national headlines. That's the kind of must-watch we're talking about. Whenever I think about
not the
must-watch,
freak show factor.
Yeah, not the freak show.
It's not the zoo animal that set his foot on fire by accident and is hopping around.
I mean, it's to me, if you want to be must-watch in a good way, it comes down to one thing, and that's the explosiveness of your offense. There's other aspects of your team, such as a dominant defense, that can keep viewers coming back. But to draw eyes to the television in the first place, it has to be that explosive offense.
Fair enough. Let's get the roll call going. NU Grandpa in first, a whole almost hour 15 in front of the show start. Well done, NU Grandpa. Patrick is in. He says, can't beat Gramps. Anonymous, at least Sam Hoiberg isn't in the portal, ... yet.
We have to get there at some point.
No, we'll get there. We'll talk with Bruntzy here in an hour, but we'll go 4:40 with some basketball thoughts. KG checks in, 4th, 5th, or 6th. Brian, check that. Brandon says hello. Dion, good to have you, brother. You're in at 6. Anthony says, what's up? I'm here for food and booze. Welcome in, Anthony. Where do you rank the peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the sandwich hierarchy?
Also, what wine are you pairing with that PB&J if you want to go food and booze?
No wine.
A nice dry white, maybe?
Justin checks in as well. NASCAR Eric is present. Shane, what's up, Shane? Shane from the West Coast is in. And Tuck says, what's up? Ty, no breakfast runza for Western Nebraska. How unfortunate. I won't have to eat with gloves on. That's pretty good. Good to hear from Cliff. Cliff, welcome in. Good to see your name. There we have it. So Cliff says he was running from the ATF, a moonshine run. Cliff, well played, sir. Brian wants chunky from the peanut butter standpoint.
We don't know that.
He
could be talking about anything.
I'm gonna go with the topic du jour. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So we'll get to more of your comments as well, but let's hear from Pot Roast. And this was pretty good. Was throwing shade on the media in a fun, friendly manner. Cut one here, and I love the nickname for his defensive line unit, Death Row.
Guys don't care about Death Row. It's okay. Don't care about us. Just worry about the quarterback. Just, we got all the pictures of Dylan. No more pictures of Ty Robinson. All pictures of 15.
He was pretty good. Pot Roast was solid. As we hear from him, Mitch Sherman here in 5 minutes, but a little more from Pot Roast Cut 2. And some thoughts as we kind of dive a little bit deep here from Pot Roast on that defensive line as he sets things up. And the thing that's been consistent, that messaging, and it's been about the standard that's continued to raise up.
Well, honestly, he's done a great job with his weight and done a great job with his body. He's in great shape. He's a guy right now we have to pull out of practice as coaches. You know what I mean? Just knowing, the rigors that he went through with wrestling, coming off of nationals, came back the next week, was ready to practice, and we had to slow him down. So, he's full throttle right now. He's lifting, doing everything, fully in the playbook now and, leading the group. And sometimes he'll sneak in practice and get a rep or two. And, I try to get him out, but he's ready to go. And, his weight has stabilized. He's around 290, so he'll get a little bit heavier, but we want to make sure he do it the right way.
So clearly talking about Polar Bear, a topic of conversation just because of that weight difference. How active is he? He's doing some drills, but he's not going full bore against other opponents, against any offenses. So they're easing him in, and they're just being careful. They're being cautious, which makes sense. But there's so many guys, and listen, there's so many young guys that they want to see make that jump year 1 to year 2, that it is the time is now for them to hone their skills, get better, get some confidence, apply that, put it in their back pocket, and then come roaring out for fall camp.
And think about the opportunity for those young guys with Nash and Ty. You know what you have there. Those guys have done some slight body work this offseason, so there's going to be a learning curve for them just slightly. But, like, the spring is not for them. It's for the guys like James Williams who flashed last year. Can you turn yourself from a pass rushing specialist into a guy that can be out there for 3 downs? It's like Linhart that really shined last year. What kind of step can you make in year 2 through the spring? That's who spring football is for. Those guys that are a little further down the depth chart. I'll add Van Poppel, I'll add Mav Noonan, who's coming off of injury. But, like, guys like that, those are the guys that have a chance to really show something for you in spring football. Not the guys like Nash and Ty. As much as you want to see those guys, as special as those guys are, that's not what this time of year is for.
Some Husker baseball thoughts coming up. Mitch Sherman, Husker football insight from Mitch from The Athletic as well. And we'll get into the portal that Nebraska fans are a little frustrated about. That all happens as we continue on with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
It's that time.
Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. More comments from you in the stream. We'll get there. And we welcome in with The Athletic. It's Mitch Sherman time. Set to unleash the fury at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how's your Tuesday, man? Thanks for a few minutes.
My Tuesday is good. How are you guys?
We're good. I want to get to baseball before we talk a little spring football. And let's go importance level for tonight. And, you know, both squads will try and treat this like another game. It's not because of the rivalry. Nebraska's in the rankings for the first time in a while. What are you looking at tonight as this one unfolds with both teams that are just white hot?
Yeah, it's extra important, I think, because of what this game means from an analytics standpoint. And there have been years where Creighton's been up and Nebraska's been down, or the other way around, and the game mattered because of the rivalry. It mattered because of the geography and the players who had all kinds of history together, but it didn't necessarily mean as much for postseason, hosting possibilities in the postseason, RPI, and all of that stuff is on the table and important tonight. Clearly for Creighton, a win against Nebraska would be its best win of the year in terms of RPI. Nebraska coming out of the weekend, I haven't looked today, but the Huskers were at 11th.
Yep.
And it's not much different for Nebraska when you look at Creighton, which isn't that high, but is still a top 75 team in the RPI. So a road game, this would definitely represent, we get into some basketball lingo here, but it applies to baseball too. It would represent a quad 1 win for Nebraska. And the Huskers don't have one of those yet. They've got a win against Baylor, and then had opportunities, I would say, against, and having not looked at the RPI, I just think because they're in the Big 12, if not quad 1s, certainly quality wins that Nebraska did not get against Texas Tech and Oklahoma in that first weekend. So despite the gaudy record at 20-5 for Will Bolt's team, and an out-of-conference schedule that's more than respectable at number 27 nationally, they are lacking in one of those wins that stand out. And this is an opportunity, or at least the latest opportunity for Nebraska to get one of those. And they're going to be few and far between from here on out because it's Big Ten, and then you have some Tuesday games against Creighton this month, and then a couple against Kansas and one left against Kansas State. The first one was weathered out. So those games for where Nebraska has an opportunity to be at the end of May start to loom large. And while the Big Ten remains your primary goal, these games, more so than in some other years, have real significance. So I like the fact that Nebraska's got one of its better pitchers and Will Walsh on the mound at Charles Schwab tonight.
Yeah, Mitch, isn't it weird? I mean, I think Husker Baseball, based on what they've put on the field so far this season, I feel confident in saying it's a team that should make a regional, barring any sort of monumental collapse in the Big Ten slate, which I don't see as likely given the quality of the Big Ten, and that's not a slight towards the Big Ten, It's just a reality. But is it not weird to say with a team that's won 20 of their first 25 games that, like, the margin of error going forward, if you want to achieve your goals, which is host a regional, at least put yourself in a spot where you can win a regional, maybe make it to a super regional, if that's the goals of this team, the margins get really pretty thin from here on out.
It's just the reality of the Big Ten. If Nebraska had done the same thing and had been a member of the Big 12, and again, you're playing a different kind of conference schedule. So the challenge would look completely different from April 1st until the end of May. But you're right that you have a lot more margin for error, and it's thin. And there are some years in the Big Ten, I think, where the margin for error has been larger because there have been 4 or 5 regional caliber teams, and looking at it right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, it looks like a 2 or 3 bid league this year. And it's hard to increase those credentials, to better those metrics when the teams are just beating up on each other. Nebraska has some decent out-of-conference games in April or May, as I mentioned, against Creighton, Kansas, and Kansas State. But most of the teams in the Big Ten aren't scheduling that aggressively out of conference. They're just looking to get in by perhaps winning the Big Ten or winning the Big Ten tournament, which of course guarantees you a spot in a regional, or they just don't have those kind of aspirations. So it's going to be frustrating for Nebraska, I think, to kind of watch the RPI as the season goes on. It's probably never going to be higher than it is right now, and unless it's tomorrow morning after a win against Creighton, and then it's going to start to plummet. Even when you play name programs like Ohio State and Michigan and Maryland and Iowa and Indiana, these schools that have had success, this isn't necessarily a banner year for all of those schools. Some will be decent, but the RPI is not going to stay where it is just because of the nature of the Big Ten.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic at Mitch Sherman, where you find and follow on Twitter. So, Mitch, I want to go to spring football real quick, and caught up, and nice to see you at the media session today. And what's your take on Nebraska's lofty goals defensively? Right on, accurate, or do you think too much is? And Tony White's the first to say last year's last year, but based on what you saw last year, do you agree with Nebraska having lofty goals this upcoming season?
Well, they sure ought to have lofty goals, yeah. They've got 11 players on that defense coming back who started 3 games or more. And, that doesn't include a guy like Prince Will. That doesn't include Javen Wright. And I think those two are key pieces in this defense. So there's upwards of 13, 14, 15 players on this defense who can be, I think, penciled in right now as proven players, key contribitors. I'm not including Stephon Thompson in that group, who's got some hills to climb, as we've heard in his transition to Nebraska. But I like his chances to do that just because of what he's been in the past and the fact that he's still new here. It doesn't include Bly Hill, who may be the early leader to start at cornerback opposite Tommy Hill. So there are, and then you have a whole group of young defensive backs that Evan Cooper has processed through his evaluation system and are starting to get developed in the program. Guys like Jeremiah Charles, who I wrote about today, and his connection with Jalen Lloyd. There's a lot of budding athleticism, proven talent, and then a group up front that's anchored by Hutmaker, Robinson, Jamari Butler. We saw Cam Lenhart, who's shockingly a freshman despite looking like a 30-year-old at the podium today. It's an imposing group up front, and as Terrance Knighton said, to be a great defense, it has to start up front, and Nebraska's well positioned for that to be the case.
Mitch, whenever we look at the defense from last year, one of the things that stands out is the depth. The guys that had a role within that defense. It may have not been all 3 downs, but I think of a guy like James Williams that really came on strong as the year went on, showing himself as a guy that had a role as a 3rd down pass rusher. Are there any names you're watching, guys in the spring right now that we might not be talking about, but come 6 months from now, guys that might be working their way into the rotation defensively, kind of showing that development within the defense? Any names you're watching for?
He's a good one to mention. You're kind of reading the text off of my screen right now in what I'm writing for tomorrow about 10 players that I've got my eyes on, who've got my attention in this spring. And, on the defensive side, I'm mainly mentioning players who are more established, like Isaac Gifford and the kind of leader that he's becoming. Same thing with Nash Hutmaker. Same thing on a younger level with Cam Lenhart. I think James Williams is a great place to go, and I didn't. He's not counted in the players who've started games at Nebraska. I didn't mention him in the last answer when I got into Wright and Javen Wright and some of the others who are established players, but he could be a big piece. It's easy to overlook James Williams because he's a guy that was in junior college a year ago, and no one had heard of him around the Nebraska program until the middle of the season when he comes off the scout team to start sacking quarterbacks and chasing quarterbacks around the backfield in the Big Ten. So, yeah, he's definitely somebody I would say who is worth keeping an eye on the defensive side as a player that isn't necessarily in that category of like returning starter. Marquise Buford last year just played in a couple of games, but he's an established guy. Who didn't do a lot in 2023 because he was coming off of the surgery. So, he potentially could be overlooked right now. I think Deshaun Singleton is a little bit overlooked right now because he's not practicing in the spring and he's coming off of an injury. And we heard from Matt Rule last week about how Nebraska wants to get a redshirt season for his year last year, though he played 1 snap in a 5th game. So there's an appeal that's going to have to be filed there. He's somebody else. Really, I think there's more on the offensive side who are under the radar, but those are a few defensively. I
want to go back to James Williams just for a second here, Mitch. He did end up saving his red shirt last year, did he not?
Mm-hmm.
He's a red shirt sophomore.
Yeah. He was a 4-game guy a year ago. Yeah.
Mitch, we've got 30 seconds. Will Nebraska be must-see TV next year?
In the state of Nebraska, it will be, sure. It always is. And
I know that.
Maybe,
I know that. Do
maybe
they have
a touch more. I don't know that if you're in Ohio or Florida, you're going to say that Nebraska's must-see TV at any point.
Maybe if you're in Georgia.
And there's some former Bulldogs on the team. Maybe they would want to watch those guys, or a certain quarterback who has ties to the state of Georgia and family in the state of Georgia. Yeah, I mean that's kind of up to Dylan Raiola, don't you think? Nebraska can become a hot item nationally and a team that people are talking about if it has a freshman at the quarterback spot who's doing big things. But otherwise, to become must-see TV on the national level, you've got to be in contention for a national championship, and I don't know that that's in the cards for the Huskers in 24.
Fair enough, but you answered it. And what kind of splash do you make offensively? Defense could be dominant. Mitch, enjoy the ball game tonight. Thanks for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, guys.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us here on Hail Varsity.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. Big thanks to Mitch Sherman, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, where you can go to get the podcast download, catch the replay on the different social media platforms and can watch live or get caught back up with the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, 489-1240, 489-1240. To get in, 800-825-5865. We'll hear a little bit more from Coach Knighton and Tony White in just a moment. First, though, Nebraska basketball is on a lot of people's minds. Michael Bruntz, 25 minutes away. We'll check in with Bruntsy. But Maytar Jop is into the transfer portal, 6'10", 215-pound freshman. A guy that was just dinged, and you love that kind of twitch/athleticism. And Nebraska's put some work in with him. He's off to the portal. Jamarcus Lawrence off to the portal. Wiltshire off to the portal. You've lost a ton of guys on that roster. You haven't had much of your core go. But going to be a busy world tour for Fred as he's in the midst of it right now. And Elijah, Nebraska targeting a standout from North Dakota State, Andrew Morgan. He's hosting Nebraska in-home. A couple of kids from Minnesota that are in the portal as well, and a former teammate of Rink. Right now, the initial knee-jerk is, oh no, you had a number of guys in the portal from a team that went to the tournament with the hopes being everyone came back that could, and then you sprinkle in some more assistance offensively, you sprinkle in some more athleticism, and boom, you're good for that first tournament win. But you really can't be shocked by anything in today's era of college because of the portal.
Well,
and
would it not be more shocking if everyone stuck around in this era of the portal?
You saw it in football with some key, I'm just saying, you saw it on the football side. Why are folks leaving Fred? Listen, it's not a Fred thing. It's a portal thing.
I was not expecting it to be like this, where it's hot and heavy. I think it's 6 names into the portal plus the graduates right now. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of turnover, but some attrition was to be expected this season. Basketball's different. Like only 5 guys can start in basketball as opposed to 22 in football. And if you include the special teams, it's a hell of a lot more than that on the football field. A lot more guys can contribute in that way. Basketball's different. The lineups are thin. I mean, you have the simple fact of the matter that guys want to leave for professional basketball as soon as possible. Like there is a time crunch because once you turn 22 in the NBA, you're ancient. Your 18 and 19-year-olds have a lot more value to the NBA than somebody who's 22 or 23 or a redshirt senior. It's just the simple nature of college basketball. Again, I wasn't expecting maybe this, or maybe I should have. Like, what was one of the things we talked about that set Nebraska apart last year? It's depth. Man, you have 8 or 9 guys that you feel very, very confident in what they can go do on the floor in a Big Ten game. Not many schools can say that. Even like Kansas, one of the better teams in the country this year. I know it was a down year by their standards, but they're still a very good basketball team.
They were mortal in Big 12 play because of their lack of depth.
Because of their lack of depth. And this is Kansas we're talking about here. This is not NC State or I know NC State's in the Final Four right now, so maybe not the perfect example. This is an NC State. It's not Minnesota where we're talking they couldn't.
This isn't Carolina we're talking about that bowed out in the Elite Eight.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just like
or Sweet 16. Sorry, Hooksy.
The top teams in college basketball have depth issues because everyone wants to play. It's as simple as that in basketball. Guys will hit the portal to go find the opportunity that will give them a chance to play. It shouldn't be a surprise that one of the deeper teams in the Big Ten in Nebraska is dealing with some attrition because you have some guys that are bench players or guys that are simply role players, get in once every couple games, get very limited minutes. We shouldn't be surprised that they are looking elsewhere for an opportunity to go and play. That's just a reality of college basketball. That's the era we're moving into. Mm-hmm.
Well, so DJ asks about the breakfast runza. Is it real? It is real.
Apparently.
Tomorrow the tweet is out. I'll just repeat the tweet. 56th and Holdridge location, I think.
The one by my house.
Yeah. So Elijah's going to be camped out there for everybody. Everybody in the stream. Just Venmo Elijah your money.
I will not do that. I've been trying to decide if that melee is something it's going to be a melee.
Oh, dude.
It's going to be a melee. Is that something I want to deal with? Is that how I want to start my day tomorrow?
I think it's
likely not.
Show duty for you.
Is it? Well, if you make it show duty, I guess I'll be there. I'm just trying to, like, the two options. Do I go walk the dogs, have a nice peaceful morning, listen to an audiobook, or do I go deal with the melee that is everyone that's a Runza fan trying to get the breakfast Runza at 8 in the morning? I don't know.
Tiger Shark Diver is drinking beer right now, so he's in a better spot than all of us. But names to watch, you got Danger from Illinois.
Man, the NIL opportunities with him, like go Breaking Bad with it. I am the danger.
Yeah, you just hear a knock at the door. Hey, It's Danger. 6 points contest, but he was pretty big and physical and agile for a big guy, so we'll see if he's a target. You've got Andrew Morgan, as mentioned, from North Dakota State, 13 a contest for him. The thing that you got to do is take Danger, because he is true danger, off the floor the final 2 minutes in a 5-point ball game, so he ain't at the free throw line clanking based on his percentages. Pharrell Payne, pretty big and physical forward for Minnesota. In the portal at 6'9". You have Josh Ola Joseph, also from Minnesota. He's at 6'7", so those are two big bodies. Minnesota was big and physical, and both those guys were a reason Minnesota had a little bit of a heartbeat going on this season later on into the year. Connor Hickman out of Bradley, 40% three-point guy, 15 points a contest. So he's the guy I was telling you about that is Rink's teammate. So that's part of the Fred World Tour. You add those compared to what you lost, you're getting guys that performed in conference play. Who's the dude from Iowa State, Ballou?
Omaha Ballou.
Yeah, Omaha Ballou.
Who is literally named after the city.
Sure.
That is not a coincidence. He is literally born in Omaha, named after the city of Omaha.
So he's somebody you look at too. But you got to get big, physical, and athletic. That's where you got to upgrade. The high wire act is making sure that everyone fits, because you can go get more talent. Does that talent fit into your room with Juan, right, with Rink, and with Bryce? So Fred's been pretty good the last couple of years with his portal evaluations, but the true test will be that locker room with Bryce kind of being your leader as I look at it. And to be honest, you need more dudes like Jawan Gary, okay? Jawan Gary's big, fast, talented, athletic, and a guy that can just swoop in and get rebounds, attack the rim, of course, and hit an occasional three for you. So you need more of a lineup like that, I think, to take the next step, depending on your lineup, and I should say depending on your matchup. You go perfect with this tour, then I think you're sitting all right. And you don't know where William Kyle or Frankie Fiddler's at on their timeline. I think William Kyle's probably going to not rush to judgment with the first bag he's been offered, because there's more and more people ringing that doorbell, because he's super, super gifted.
Or knocking on that door, you know, the one who knocks. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I was going Breaking Bad again.
No, I know. But we've exhausted it with Danger.
Yeah, okay.
Because he is the one who knocks, right? Knocks down a free throw. Okay, we'll wind down hour one. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
So Elijah Herbel is waffling on his breakfast runza. We have folks in the stream. Have you talked about the breakfast runza yet? It's a 2-day ordeal on the show. Do we know what time it starts?
8 a.m.
Okay.
So I'm trying to decide, like, is this something where I have to be in line at 7:30?
Dude, it is all about front row concert seats. It's all about getting into Cameron for senior day against Carolina. You need to camp out.
Okay.
And you love camping.
I do love camping. Have I told you? Well, let's go back. This would have been this is not a true camping story, but actually camping out for something. My 16th birthday. An artist, for all you old folks out there, an artist by the name of J. Cole was in Lincoln at the Bourbon Theater. It was his $1 in a Dream tour, which essentially was
Was it worth it?
I'm getting there. We have 4 minutes. I'm gonna make this story last.
Promise?
No. Well, anyway, long story short, J. Cole's from a small town, so he wanted to give back to other smaller venues and just do like these affordable concerts at smaller venues. It was on my 16th birthday. It was right after he dropped the Forest Hills Drive album. So I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to check this out. The younger listeners out there understand what a watershed moment that album was for those of us that were like in high school at the time. Great album. But long story short, I was first in line camping out at the Bourbon Theater. I got there at noon. The concert started at 8. So I camped out in my lawn chair. I watched like almost an entire season of Breaking Bad, sitting out in front of the Bourbon Theater. People give me crazy looks.
How many Pinkmans do you see out in front of the Bourbon?
Well, it's like on a Thursday, if I remember correctly. So I was like, people are going to be like, nobody else showed up until like 5 p.m. to come camp out. So just me sitting there alone. All my friends were front row. Awesome concert. Come back out. My lawn chair was taken by somebody, so I lost a lawn chair. But that was a worthy price to pay for that concert. Sitting in the front row, it was a good one for a Grammy-winning artist.
Okay,
to be able to see that at the Bourbon Theater front row, general admission, it was awesome.
I think Uncle Mark and Carson camped out for a PS5.
See, that's not worth it to me.
Well,
I didn't. I should have at Walmart one day and got
when they
mine.
resold them overseas. It was totally worth it.
Wow, okay. They were jerks.
Yes.
They're the reason I couldn't get a PS5 for a year and a half.
They're the reason Elijah just was pissed after Christmas dinner when they opened presents. Well, we were going to get you PS5, but some guy named Uncle Donkey was in front of us in line. And
he was only charging $1,500 for it resale.
And he got it. He absolutely got it.
I was never going to get a PS5 for Christmas anyway. That's over $100 for a Christmas gift. Try it again.
Well,
I'm not loved that much.
It's all right. Neither is Carson. So, do we have time to squeeze in one more audio clip?
Let me know which one you want, and I can let you know.
Let's do a little bit here as we hear from Pot Roast here. Defensive line. Can we hear the rundown on the D-line?
Cut 7?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Oh, it's a double-edged sword. I always felt like, when our backs were against the wall, we played well, whether it was goal line, short yards, those type of things. But, we want to be a team to get off the field early so we can get our offense in great field position so they don't have to drive 80 yards every series, But, taking the ball away is our main focus right now. We're just focusing on the things we need to get better at. Last year is last year. We're just focusing on the things that we need to improve on to take the defense to the next level and get our offense on the field more.
Well, gotta love it. D-line of focus, talent, deep, and how high can they go? We'll check in. Michael Bruntz, Husker Baseball, coming up next.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Let's talk all things Nebraska. Michael Bruntz with us from Husker 24/7. Follow Bruntsy on Twitter at Michael Bruntz. You geared up for Creighton, Nebraska. Bruntsy, how you been?
Not bad. Yeah, this is like early century Nebraska Creighton when both teams are humming along. So it should be a good game tonight.
Should be, and let's kind of get into the pitching matchup right now. You got Walsh coming in unbeaten. Vitok, is at 2-0. Both ERAs a little bit similar with Creighton's ERA at 5.40, Walsh at 4.28. What's your over/under here on total pitchers used between both teams?
Yeah, I think it's going to be up there a little bit. Part of it depends on how deep the starters can go. With Vitok, this is his first game starting this year, but he's thrown long relief appearances and gone 3 or 4 innings. He went 3 innings last year against Nebraska and Lincoln. Actually, he's actually pitched pretty well in his career against Nebraska. So, there's that. Walsh, has the ability to go 5-6 innings. He threw Saturday at Northwestern. I think he went 3 1/3 there. So, if both those guys can get kind of deep into the game a little bit, it might not be kind of the typical fire brigade game we're kind of used to seeing in this matchup. Nebraska has more bullpen depth, and they can mix and match a little bit more than what they've been able to do in the past. So, I don't know. I'd set it at 13.5 as the over/under with combined pitchers used. I think that's probably a fair number there. 13.5 or 12.5 is where I'd go. You taking the over or the under on that?
I'm taking the under on 13.5. 12.5 is where it gets a little dicey for me, where I'm now going, I don't know. So 12.5 is probably the number, if that's where I'm at.
Okay. I'm gonna go over the 12.5 to move the line down a little bit, just to make it interesting. and I'll say 13.
Okay.
What's your impression of this Creighton team? They come in at 20-4. I know they took care of business against Stanford, and this is an interesting time and space for this game, just because Nebraska's ranked, and I know the Creighton's just had Nebraska's number in recent years.
Yeah, they've won 8 of the last 10 in the series. Even though Nebraska has still a pretty decided advantage all the time, but it's interesting. I mean, Creighton and Nebraska obviously are both off to fantastic starts. Nebraska's ranked this week, like you said. This matchup seems to have had a bit more juice in recent years. It started to get a little bit sleepy there for a while, and for whatever reason, I don't know what that is exactly. There seems to be a little bit more edge to the matchup. I don't know if that's because you seem to have even more local kids on each roster. You're going against guys that you've probably played against since you were 5 or 6 years old. I don't know if that adds a little bit more to it. But this is a really kind of an important game, big picture-wise, for both of these teams, too. I mean, Creighton has not played very many RPI top 100 teams this year. Probably their best series win so far. You mentioned Stanford, but it's actually probably a series against Portland that they played. And, Nebraska, that they need kind of these kind of perception, good wins if they're going to do anything postseason-wise, because the Big Ten, I think, is going to be down a little bit this year. So it's real important, and beyond just the kind of mutual hatred, I think, that you kind of have in each dugout too. So it's been a little while since we've had that in this series, and just win percentage wise, I mean, you have to go back to like 2008 or 2005, the last time that these two teams have been off to such good starts as they are this year.
And Michael, you kind of hit on where I wanted to go next with how good this Nebraska team is and what they can prove tonight, because I've seen enough this season to show me that Nebraska is one of the top squads in the Big Ten. But the problem is being one of the top squads in the Big Ten this season isn't really saying much once you consider the context of postseason, trying to host a regional, trying to make it to a super regional. Has Creighton shown you enough this year with that series win over USC being the one that really stands out to show that a win tonight can prove that not only is Nebraska a good baseball team for the Big Ten, Nebraska's a good baseball team nationally?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Nebraska's kind of shown that to a degree, with some of the non-conference series they've played. I mean, I think they've actually played, a pretty strong schedule, stronger than maybe what they've done in the past to this point. I do think it's an opportunity to, get some confidence. I mean, this is a series that has not gone Nebraska's way in recent years. You have a team on the other side of the diamond that has a lot of reasons to want to beat you beyond, just the fact that the game's being played. I think it's it's a good test for this roster in terms of, like, you're probably going to have some late inning situations that are going to feel like postseason type pressure. I mean, that's kind of what I'm expecting out of this game. And so from that point of view, yeah, I mean, I think you can learn something about this team. I think Nebraska bills itself as a tough team. They want to see themselves as kind of that grinded out type team. And I think this is the kind of game where you're going to have to do that. I mean, this Creighton team can hit. They've got good pitching depth. and I'm expecting a pretty even matched, game on Tuesday. I mean, I think it's going to be, like I said, I'm hoping that it kind of lives up to what it looks like it's going to be on paper. Because, like I said, I mean, it's just felt kind of sleepy the last few years. And, a little juice in this in-state rivalry wouldn't be a bad thing.
Bruntz, who's your MVP for Nebraska 25 games in?
It's tough because they've got so much depth. I mean, I don't know that there's one hitter that you would say is absolutely that guy. I mean, gun to my head, Josh Caron is probably that guy to this point with what he's done behind the plate. And he's been, Nebraska's been really good at two-out hitting this year. That's been a big difference for this team, and Caron's been at the front of that. I think, going into last week, he was hitting over 400 with 2 outs. So that's notable. On the mound, to me, it's got to be Brett Sears. I mean, Nebraska didn't have that frontline ace coming into the year. You hope that Sears would be that. And, I mean, he's probably right now the Big Ten pitcher of the year if the season ended right now. I mean, he's been that good. So, and there's guys in the league that have much more attention draft-wise than what Brett Sears does. So I would say Sears on the mound and probably Caron at the plate.
Bruntzy, we're going to shift from baseball to the hardwood. Diop in the portal just recently. Of course, Jamarcus Lawrence announcing yesterday. Total overhaul from some guys that have been in Fred's program and developing. Of course, Wilcher. You've got right now, as we talk, the core still there with Bryce, with Rink, with Juan. But do you think Fred's got something up his sleeve, or dare I even say it, upgrades that are on the way? What's the sources for Bruntzy saying about who could land in that locker room sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, I think out of the guys that have left so far, I mean, certainly, Jamarcus Lawrence is probably the one that hurts the most, just because you've put 2 seasons into developing him. I think it kind of turned a corner this year in a number of roles. And, I anytime that you're able to bring a guy back multiple years, I think it just helps you as a program now in the transfer portal era. That one's probably the most painful. Wilcher, I think, was probably headed out the door anyways. Eli Rice was another guy that showed promise, and would have been nice to have him back for another year. But I mean, Fred and his staff are kind of circumventing the Midwest right now, talking to potential transfer portal guys. They're in North Dakota last night, Minnesota this morning. They're going to be in Illinois today. So you kind of have to make fast work of guys, right away. And then you had, Frankie Fiddler, one Kyle, the 2, Bellevue West kids that went to South Dakota State and Omaha. They've been in Lincoln as well. Nebraska's in the mix there. So, they're going to rebuild it. I think they've shown in the last couple of years that when they've had to rebuild, they've found a nice mix of talent and fit. And, the tough part is you'd like to be able to have guys like Lawrence and Wilcher and those guys that you can kind of supplement with guys out of the portal. And, you're just going to have to rebuild it again. That's just kind of the nature of college basketball right now, unfortunately.
It's Michael Bruntz with us here. And Michael, do you read it all into the fact that there's been kind of 2 separate waves of departures? You had the departures early last week, and then Fred's out on the path on the transfer portal market talking to some guys, and now there's a second wave of departures this week. Do you read into that at all in terms of what Fred might be working on behind the scenes?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think that those guys were pushed out by anything that Nebraska's staff is doing portal-wise right now. I mean, whatever conversations that they had with the staff, those took place, 24 hours after they got back from Memphis. I mean, that's just kind of how you have to be dialed in with things. So part of it, I think, is just kind of, maybe lining up what your options might be, seeing what might be out there before you enter the portal. I don't know. I think it's easy to kind of look at it as a cause and effect kind of thing, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case with Chope and with Lawrence. So yeah, I mean it's unfortunately with the dead period coming up too. I mean you gotta move fast, whether you're a player trying to move on or a coach trying to rebuild your roster.
When we talk about some of the locations Fred and staff have been, of course, you're hoping to hit a home run with Andrew Morgan, similar to what Bama did with their Bison import that's now in the Final Four. You got a couple of kids in the portal from the University of Minnesota that are big and athletic. You got the kid from Iowa State that's possible as well.
Baloo, yeah.
Yeah, Baloo. So Nebraska's got to get two things right? You got to get a little more physical and athletic, but you also got to get fit. And that's a delicate balancing act, because the thing that made this team so good, not only their depth and their waves of talent, but the fact that they all got along pretty good. I mean, the chemistry hit perfect, and that was a carryover from Walker and Sam.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I guess in some ways, you've recruited some of these guys previously with Baloo, and Nebraska was in the mix for him. He's visited multiple times, so it's not, completely new there. They've been talking to a guy, Connor Hickman, who was at Bradley for 3 years. Started 3 seasons there. He's a 40% three-point shooter. The type of guy I think you kind of have to mix with some of that talent. I mean, you're kind of looking for, the on-the-floor stuff I think you can kind of figure out by watching film. Mm-hmm. Fit, you kind of are hoping that what you hear and, sources and people that you talk to are on the button with that. But you never really know until they get there. I mean, even in the situation with Hickman, at least you have, he was a former college teammate of Rink Mass at Bradley, so at least there's somebody there that can vouch for him. But, the fit piece of it is always kind of the tougher thing in my mind, because you're having to, basically recruit a guy in like 2 weeks at the most and hope that he kind of meshes with everybody else. So it's not easy to do. I mean, I think that's why people maybe have to appreciate the job that Fred's done the last couple of years with finding some of these guys. I mean, it's really tough to do, and you're kind of really threading the needle just based on the amount of time you have to do all this stuff.
Bruntz, when we look at a guy that just entered into the portal, Dane Danger from Illinois, really big and physical, not bad range, but not a three-point guy. As we wrap with you here, Bruntz, Danger, how would you see him fitting in? Is he that center, or is he still undersized at 6'9.5"? Yeah,
I mean, I think you kind of need somebody. I mean, assuming you get Rink Mass back, mm-hmm. and he obviously has a decision to make. I mean, you need somebody that's kind of that true 5, or somebody that can kind of run the floor and rebound for you. Because, I mean, I think you saw against A&M and, at times this season too, where Mass is a little bit limited mm-hmm. in what he can do defensively. And, if you have to play more of an up-tempo team, I mean, that's just not a great matchup for him. So, I think Danger kind of fits that. Some of the guys that were at Minnesota that Fred's been talking to, I think kind of fit that mold as well. The tough part with Chope leaving is, you felt like you maybe could have developed things and gotten a few minutes out of him this season if things kind of broke right. But you're kind of having to reset the deck in the post. And, newsflash, everybody has to do that. I mean, you're looking for, an athletic big that can move and rebound and guard the rim. It's like trying to find a starting left tackle in the transfer portal. It's just, everybody's looking for that, and there's a premium there.
Michael Bruntz with us on Hail Varsity Radio, at Michael Bruntz on Twitter, Husker 24/7 Sports. Read him there. Bruntz, we'll talk again. Thank you.
No problem, Schmidt. Thanks a lot.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. More thoughts on Nebraska. Creighton Husker Hall of Famer, 2-time World Series champ Joba Chamberlain jumping in the stream with us here. Joba, what's good? A big one tonight in Omaha. First word that comes to your mind when it's Nebraska Creighton.
Why isn't it on TV? We have to pay $30 for it. I won't mention why or who it's through, but you got
greed.
Yeah, I guess. No, super excited. Obviously with the cancellation last week, having, obviously a little bit of bragging rights without it being said. I don't think we need to say it when it comes down to these types of games, and there's a little more on the line just because of what it is and how close they are, and kind of what Nebraska has done so far, having 20 wins, and it's only the fourth time it's happened since 2000, and riding what they have. I love these type of matchups for these midweeks because obviously prepares you for going into the weekend, and I just it's one of those things where you've seen what happened, and obviously getting a sweep is huge. Winning the series, obviously, first and foremost, is most important. Sweeps are a bonus. But I would like to see, and everybody, they can look at it however they want. We're 20-5, and that's unbelievable. And if you would have told me, we would have 20 wins at this point, I'd have said, let me have whatever's in your coffee, and we'll have a good time with that. So. But no, I think there's a lot of things that we can improve on, and that's just it feels good to say that with the record that we have going into this game and what we've done so far.
Joba, what is your concern level with the Husker bullpen as it stands? Because that has been the place where most often things get hairy for this Husker baseball team. You look at Sunday afternoon, whenever they blow it and the offense has to pick you back up, winning in extra innings. Tonight feels like a game you're probably going to get a decent number of arms coming out of the bullpen with Walsh on the mound. He's coming off somewhat short rest, so you don't think he's going to go too deep into this game. If I see a place where the wheels could fall off for Nebraska tonight, it would be with that bullpen. What's your take on the bullpen? How close are they to being the type of bullpen that this Husker baseball team needs if they want to make some sort of postseason run?
And that's I hate to beat the same drum of what we've kind of talked about, but that's been kind of the one inconsistency that we've seen from, the beginning of the year. And obviously we saw a little bit of it this weekend and how, our offense came and bailed us out and things of that nature. So, I think with the way things are going, you're going to have to ride the hot hand. You're going to have to, and we've seen guys throw the ball well and then come out the next day and give it up a little bit. And we've had some guys step in and clean up the mess and do things like that. So, just the consistency, I think, is the biggest thing. And it's not just relying on 3 or 4 guys. We're out there running, 6 to 8 sometimes and 6 very frequently. And I think it's just you got to ride what you got and see who kind of separates themselves, as we've seen from the starting side of it. And I just, for me, and I know I've said this before, and it's just the consistency of going out and not feeling that I guess nervous energy. Like, we all have good nervous energy, but I feel like as soon as starters come out, that energy kind of switches, and that's just based upon the consistency factor. And obviously we've seen over the course of this 10-game winning streak, we're a sub-3 ERA team. But our walks to strikeouts are not 3-1. But you know what? It's working, and so I guess now it's kind of nitpicking. And like I said, if you'd have told us we have 20 wins at this point, it would definitely be a different conversation. But yeah, I think it's just nitpicking at this point, and obviously going into this midweek game and getting off on the right foot going into the weekend against Ohio State is going to be huge for us.
And it should be noted, as I talk about Walsh, he did only pitch somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think it was like 45 pitches on Saturday.
Yeah, it was right around 45.
They pulled him pretty early, so there is a chance he could go deeper than I just laid out for you in the game tonight. I still think it's going to be a game that's going to get turned over to your bullpen, but we'll find out. I guess we're only about 30 minutes away from first pitch here.
It's pretty important for both teams. Now it's 1 of 3. But from an RPI and SOS standpoint, this is another obvious pelt you want on your wall if you're Nebraska because of the in-state factor, but also where Creighton's at and how well they're playing. So I don't think you just go Johnny Allstaff today for the sake of it, and I think you ride Will as long as he's throwing strikes for you. You flip it around. He's been magic his last 6 games, the Ohtani tribute with how well he's been playing offensively. One thing this team's been great at, Joba, is 2-strike hitting. Is that this team's identity in the clutch, or do you expect that to continue because they've been so good at it to this point?
Yeah, and it's contagious, and you see the approaches that they take. And, one thing that I've really, obviously they average with 2 strikes, but just not giving away at bats. That's one thing I've really, really noticed too, of seeing guys grind at bats and not giving them up, and not taking it with you on the field, and that's shown in the air categories and things like that. So the intangibles of the mental side of it, I think has shown its head in such a great way as far as competitive ABs, guys going out there grinding through at bats, and it just shows. I mean, it's frustrating when you get into a 7-8 pitch at bat. You're like, all right, dude, either put it in play or something. I'm tired. I've only got so many things in this thing right here. Stop wasting them. And that wears on people. And we've done a great job of that. And I think it's something to their credit. And, when you're sitting in the dugout or you're on deck and you see a guy grind through an at bat, it's like, all right, here we go. Runner on second, less than 2 outs. What do I got to do? I got to get him over. Eighth. Runner on third, let me do my job. And, and we've seen sacrifice flies. I mean, obviously we got one guy with 4 and leading the Big Ten and what he's done. So understanding situations, I think we've done a really, really good job of that, of being able to slow the game down and understand how big 2-out hits are. And I think that's the identity to the aspect of, we're not going to have a guy that hits 20 homers. That's just not the way our lineup is built. But we're going to have some guys that can change the game with one swing. But we're also going to be able to add and do things in so many different ways, where you can win a game 2-1, but you can win a game 8-6 because, you get 2-out hits, you string those things across and you do the situational things well that may not necessarily go in the scorebook, of getting a runner over or getting a bunt down or, doing certain things like that. So I think that's very, very, very good in the mental side of it, of understanding and slowing the game down and knowing that not all the time does it go in the scorebooks, but it could mean the difference between a win and a loss.
You talk about 2-strike hitting, 2-out hitting, that situational baseball. I mean, a little bit of small ball to this team as well, I'd like to add. Does that not just feel like Will Bolt's brand of baseball? It wasn't the brand that they played last season, but this season and how this team wins baseball games strikes me as the way that Will Bolt wants to win baseball games. Would you say that's fair, that this is a team that's cut from a cloth similar to his own?
Yeah, I mean, a grinder, and, you fight tooth and nail to get everything that you deserve and what you've worked for. And it starts from the top. And it starts from, how, he runs the program and how he puts the energy forth and all of his coaches and how much they care and, what got them to this point. And, and knowing those guys and what they think, they're not satisfied. It obviously there's a long way to go, and to get to where they want to be, they're going to continue to have to get better and better every day. And you can't be like, oh, this is great, because it ain't how you start, it's how you finish. If you can keep this up and keep going. But Elijah, to your point, it's just, we can steal bases, we can play the small ball, we can get 2-out hits, we can get 2-strike hits. And, it's just the grinding aspect, because, there's not necessarily one guy that's going to, put you on his back. Yeah. Are we going to have guys that have awesome weekends? We had one, Cole, 6 for 10. And we've seen it a couple times this year where dudes have gone off on the weekend, and that happens. And the nice thing about it, it's been different guys. It hasn't been the same person. And I think that's huge. And I think, to your point, is we can beat you with so many different guys in so many different ways. And I think that's just kind of what Will has built his program around, and what he sees is the best in the kids that he brings in. That's exactly the guys that he brought in for those purposes and the way that he's going to play the game.
Husker Hall of Famer Joba Chamberlain, two-time World Series champ, talking Nebraska Creighton in Omaha tonight. So I think we all see a lot of Will's personality in this 2024 team. They hate losing, right? And that's a little bit of a cliche, but it's true. You want that trait, a guy that hates to lose more than he loves to win, or as a competitor, you want to go out there and give it your all, but you want that W at the end of the day. And tell me a little bit about teams you've been a part of that take on your coaches / managers' personality, how it's simpatico with one another, and how well it can really drive a season.
I think you feed off the energy. You feed off one another. You feed off, the energy instilled in practice in everything you do. And that's why I said I think it starts from the top, because it's just, we all see what happens on the field and we see the record and we see all that, right? We don't see the other stuff. We don't see the kids in the classroom and how they're presenting themselves. And that's the thing that I think they do such a great job of is not just being baseball players, being great young men. And that not only goes on the baseball field, but everywhere else. And it just carries over, and that energy and what it does, you become, every successful team that I've ever played on, it's felt like a family. It's felt from top to bottom. There was nothing left out. There was, you did dinner, you hung out together, and it wasn't because, that's what you're supposed to do. It was just, that was the energy and the vibe of what it is. And I feel like that's the way, taking a picture after you win and things like that. It's like, it creates that dynamic of a family. And I think it's going to get stronger because, you get that little taste. And, I just don't want a little taste. I want the whole thing. Give me all 5 courses. I just don't want an appetizer. And, we've started that way. And as we continue to go through this season, and it's going to be, okay, let's get the main dish. Let's get another one. And here we go. And, I think that just is being created right now, and we're seeing it, and we see it on the field, but that's the least of it. We're seeing the outcome on the field because of everything else that's going into it.
Joba, that's big when we talk about what can kind of propel you to wins. What 25 games in, not to over project here, but we kind of see what they are, and that's diverse offensively, not completely solid, but a good work in progress with the bullpen. You feel good about your weekend options, and you feel good about the remedy with the midweeks, the way they've approached those and those results. Is this team good enough, talented enough as we sit and talk here early April to make noise in a regional and knock on that super regional door?
Yeah, like I said, we're here at the appetizer part of it. Hopefully here in a couple of months we can talk about, see if we're going to get dessert. And I think we have the opportunity, and I think there's still question marks in consistency. Obviously, we have the right guy on board with Rob and the things that he can do and the confidence and the things that he can instill in these young men. And I think it's 25 in. I think we have a pretty good base of what it is. Early we got some great competition. There's, throughout the year we've had a couple teams that have, done some things. But I think it's all building up to the run we're going to have. Elijah, it's April, when we're going to have three weekends in a row where they're going to be bangers. And I think leading up to that's going to be huge. Obviously, everything leading up to it, I'm obviously not putting the cart before the horse. But, that's going to be a true test. That is going to be like, you don't have a weekend off. We don't. And we're going to have to play, I'm not going to say perfect baseball because that doesn't happen very often. But we're going to have to play pretty dang good to understand what it's going to take to beat those teams. And I think going up to it, we're going to be put in situations to where we're going to find out, and we pick each other up. Sometimes, it happens. Bullpen, we pick them up offensively. Defensively, we pick them up on the mound. And there's just they've done it, and we've seen it. You don't start 20-5. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're playing T-ball. 20-5 is still tough to do. I don't care if you're playing Little League 14U. I mean, it's just tough. Some days the ball just doesn't go your way, and that's the nature of the game. But I think we have an opportunity. Obviously, with where we stand now, it's really good. But we have to continue to get better and know that is the end goal, but to not be satisfied with what we have right now and keep getting better every day and find one thing you can work on to get better and then keep working on that and then keep building and building and building. And then eventually you'll get to where you want to go and where this team has an opportunity to go.
Do they remind you of any of the teams you were on here?
I mean, of those 4 teams, I was on 2 of them that had 20 wins in 25 games. So, I always hate those guys that compare like, oh, when I did this, I'm old and have gray hair now, and I'm just a dad in the stand, so I don't really know much of anything anymore. But, yeah, it reminds me of how you can win in different ways. Mm-hmm. And, I was fortunate enough to play with some really, really good guys that could do a lot of things, and this team is kind of the same way. And, I mean, I think our pitching staff was better back when I played, but I'm also very biased to that. It also does help when 5 of those guys that pitched up for us are, played 10 years in the big league. So Rob has a pretty good idea what he's doing. And, I think that's what he's going to build with these guys in here and, be able to steal bases and win close games and then, win the 8-7s, the 10-9s. And I love watching it. It still gives me gray hair. I don't think that'll ever change, but yeah, I think these guys are on the right direction and have the opportunity to build and grow and win games in multiple dimensions of the game of baseball.
Joba Chamberlain's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, talking Nebraska, Creighton tonight. And Joba, that's where we go before we get you out. The game tonight, I'm not asking you to make a prediction. I just wanted you to tell us, how much stock do you put into a game like tonight? It's a rivalry game, so some weirdness can ensue whenever the emotions are high. It's a one-off game, but you're playing a team that's just as hot as you are. They're coming off of a weekend series win against USC. Not last week, but I believe it was the weekend before. So they're riding high. How much stock do you put into a one-off game tonight against Creighton in Omaha?
I mean, it's stock in every game. I don't care who you're playing. Obviously, this game is a little bit different just because, they are an hour away. But the stock goes into every game. That's one thing we've talked about, how important these midweek games are. And for a lot of reasons, for confidence, for momentum, for, getting comfortable with maybe something that you're working on. And, having these opportunities, it's not a gimme. You got to go out and win them. So for me, you don't approach it any different because it's Tuesday other than, it's Tuesday. It's another game. It obviously isn't a Friday night game where you're getting started, but it's a big game. I don't care what anybody says when, especially, you have all these J-skers. It's like, pick one or the other. Like, you can't win it all. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too here. So, no, you want to have the bragging. You don't want to get beat by a team that's an hour away from you. I don't care what anybody says. So, yeah, there's a little bit more on it, but you still have to go out and execute and know it's like, okay, well, we do our job. We have bragging rights, so we'll take that and then, take the momentum of the good things and things we need to work on from this game and carry it over, work on it, Wednesday and Thursday and get ready for Friday. How
do you prepare and how do you perform when some props have come your way, i.e. the ranking? You're going to go at this one hard because it's Creighton, but you put a little extra pressure on yourself because of who it is.
Yes. And you know what? It's in the world we live in today, it's hard not to notice. It's hard not to notice that, we're ranked in all 5 now. Mm-hmm. And that's credit to the boys and credit to them continue to stay nose to the grind. And I don't care what anybody says. If one of those kids is like, oh, I haven't even looked, you're a liar. Like, we've all looked. We've seen what it was. They deserve it. But now it's like, hey, hold on to it. And you know what? Let's get better. We're not satisfied with being in the 20s. Let's go. Like, let's make a statement like, boom, yeah, we're not resting on this 20. We're going to go out and mollywop Creighton tonight, and we're going to beat them by 10. Like, and have that mentality of like, I'm not happy with the 20s. I'm not. Let's go. Let's keep doing what we're doing. Don't be satisfied. Don't look at it and be like, oh, it's at the end of the day, it's just a number. Yeah, is it nice to see? But it don't mean anything right now. It's April 2nd. I mean, shoot, it could have been yesterday, and they could have just said April Fools. It don't matter. So that's the way I look at it, and I hope they have the same mentality, and I think they do. Is it recognized 100%? It needs to be, because it shows and be like, hey, this is where we've came. Whether people doubted us, didn't believe in us, doesn't matter. We believe in ourselves. We believe in the process of what we're doing. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So let's not be satisfied. Let's go out. Let's go to work and prove to everybody that this isn't a joke. Like, we're for real.
Joba Chamberlain, Husker Hall of Famer, 2-time World Series champ. Thoughts on Nebraska Creighton. Joba, enjoy. Thanks for a few minutes today.
You got it, boys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks to Joba Chamberlain, Michael Bruntz, the baseball hour here on Hail Varsity Radio. Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and good stuff from Mitch Sherman. Mike Babcock, Evan Bland tomorrow on the show. We'll have plenty of thoughts on Nebraska Creighton. $16 million at its peak last night with Iowa and LSU. And listen, and I don't know that there's a ton of pro Caitlin around here. If you're a Nebraska fan, I think you would absolutely respect the game. Maybe not the personality. Bluter, no, but she's in the Final Four. Of course, LSU, you had a lot of different reaction on social media and beyond with Angel and her.
And don't forget Haley Van Lith too. Like that reaction of her putting.
Like, what do you want me to do?
The
anti-Jordan.
That'll live on forever.
Yeah, the anti-Jordan. I mean, I tried to defend her in 41-10 to 41-10. No, awesome basketball. Really high-level basketball, fun to watch and see the rivalry go back and forth. $16 million, a shattering record, which is impressive. Does it keep growing? And I wonder if we're at that moment, and I hate to go historical here, but think of Bird and Magic. And maybe some of you are old enough to remember Bird and Magic, not only in the NBA, but you watched him in '79 for the NCAA championship. They went from what they took in that rivalry, took it to the NBA. All of a sudden, the NBA, along with Jordan and Hakeem and Barkley, I mean, you had a killer class in the 80s with Magic and Bird kind of trading blows with Showtime versus Boston. I wonder if last night was step one of flipping things, where women's basketball and more players of that ilk, and we're talking two generational talents with Angel and more so with Caitlin Clark.
And don't forget what you got coming up later in the week with Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark.
No, I mean, it's going to be nuts. It's going to be great. Can you keep that momentum? Hard to say because you're not going to have that level of player. But if Caitlin would come back for one more year, and if Angel comes back for one more year, it'd be nuts. It'd be great. But maybe they take their talents to the WNBA that's been struggling forever to get any sort of viewership or traction. Maybe it's their Magic and Bird moment. I don't know.
Well, it's a question of do you have that carry-down effect to women's basketball here in the near future, too, where the girls who are 6'6" freshmen in high school are going to be playing, around here, basketball instead of volleyball. That's kind of the discussion around here, is does it have that carried-on effect?
They'll play both.
but it had that carried-on effect of now more girls saying, you know what, I do want to go play in the WNBA. I do want to put my talents on display to the country in the women's NCAA tournament as opposed to the volleyball Final Four or whatever. There is that potential down the road. I think if the talent is there, the viewership will follow. We have a banner year this year in terms of talent. It seems like there's, the South Carolina squad, fantastic. Iowa with Caitlin Clark. UConn's always great under Gina Auriemma. And you have LSU, the name appeal there, the brand value. It's been there this season. Can it carry on?
Got to get you a read here and tell you about your friends at the NDOT. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Well, South Carolina and Iowa wouldn't be a bad thing. A little payback on South Carolina's mind. Back tomorrow at 4. Thanks.